Sir, I need you to step back from that vehicle right now.
This is my vehicle. I'm loading my equipment.
Your vehicle? You got proof of ownership?
My registration is inside.
I'm asking because vehicles like this get reported stolen all the time and you fit a certain profile.
A certain profile? You mean black?
Officer Ryan Castellano had been with the Seattle Police Department for 11 years, the last 7 working the Capitol Hill neighborhood where tech money and old money collided, where luxury vehicles lined the streets outside art galleries and coffee shops. He'd accumulated 18 complaints in those 7 years, 18 separate incidents where black professionals, Latino business owners, and Asian entrepreneurs were stopped, questioned, and accused of being in stolen vehicles or trespassing in areas they had every right to be. Every complaint had been dismissed as routine verification. His supervisors called him cautious. His training officer called him detail-oriented. No one called him what he was, a cop who couldn't accept that success and wealth weren't exclusive to white people, who saw expensive things in black hands and assumed theft. On a Sunday afternoon in Seattle, everything about Ryan Castellano's protected career came crashing down. Sterling Hayes had just wrapped a high-profile photography session at the Seattle Art Museum. He was a commercial photographer whose work appeared in national magazines, corporate campaigns, and museum exhibitions. He'd spent 15 years building his reputation, his portfolio, and his business. He owned his equipment outright. Top-tier cameras, professional lighting. He also owned his Mercedes G-Wagon, purchased 2 years earlier after his biggest contract yet. That afternoon, he was a 38-year-old black man in designer jeans and a black turtleneck, loading expensive camera gear into an expensive vehicle. And to Officer Ryan Castellano, that only meant one thing. Something didn't add up. That false assumption triggered an escalation that would end in Castellano's termination, a viral video with 15 million views, and a $7 million lawsuit that would expose how police use vehicle stops to profile successful people of color. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Capitol Hill, Seattle. A neighborhood where Victorian homes sat beside modern condos, where independent bookstores competed with tech startups, where art galleries and music venues defined the culture. The streets reflected Seattle's tech boom wealth. Teslas, Porsches, Range Rovers, Mercedes. The Seattle Art Museum sat on First Avenue, a contemporary building with soaring glass walls and rotating exhibitions that drew visitors from across the country. Sterling Hayes had grown up in Tacoma, the son of a mechanic and a school teacher. He'd discovered photography in high school, shooting local bands and street scenes on a used Canon his father bought him. He'd parlayed that passion into a degree from the Art Institute, then years of grinding as an assistant, taking whatever jobs paid while building his portfolio. His break came at 29, when a corporate client hired him for a campaign that went national. After that, the work multiplied. Editorial spreads, advertising campaigns, museum installations. By 35, he was earning 6 figures. By 37, he'd bought his dream vehicle, the Mercedes G-Wagon. Arctic white, premium interior. It was excessive and practical at once. Space for his equipment, presence that matched his success. That Sunday, he'd been hired to photograph a private event at the museum, a tech executive's birthday party. Sterling had shot portraits, candids, group photos, 4 hours of work, $15,000 fee. He'd packed up his gear as the event wound down, 3 camera bodies, 6 lenses, lighting equipment, stands, batteries, everything meticulously organized in custom cases. He'd loaded it into the back of his G-Wagon parked on the street outside the museum. Public parking, paid meter, completely legal. He'd just closed the rear hatch when he noticed the patrol car pull up behind him. Lights off, just watching. Sterling had experienced this before. The assumption, the suspicion, the disbelief that he could own what he owned. He took a breath, pulled out his phone, and started recording. Not because he wanted conflict, because he wanted documentation. Officer Ryan Castellano had been patrolling Capitol Hill when he saw the G-Wagon. Expensive vehicle, black male loading equipment. Something triggered in his mind. High-end vehicle, black driver, probably stolen. He pulled up behind the vehicle and got out, his hand instinctively resting near his service weapon. "Sir, I need you to step back from that vehicle right now." Sterling kept his phone recording but made sure his movements were slow and visible. "This is my vehicle. I'm loading my equipment." Castellano's eyes scanned the camera cases visible through the rear window. "Your vehicle? This is a Mercedes G-Wagon. You got proof of ownership?" "My registration is inside." Sterling gestured to the driver's side. "I'm a photographer. I just finished a shoot at the museum." Castellano's skepticism was palpable. A photographer? Driving this? Where'd you really get the keys from? Sterling felt the familiar mix of rage and exhaustion. I bought it, with money I earned. Why are you questioning me? Castellano stepped closer. Because vehicles like this get reported stolen all the time, and you fit a certain profile. There it was, the coded language, the assumption. Sterling's voice stayed level, but his words cut. A certain profile? You mean black? Just say it, you don't think I can afford my own car. Do you think officers should be required to have reasonable suspicion before demanding vehicle ownership proof? Drop your answer below. Castellano's face flushed. I'm doing my job. I need to see your license, registration, and proof of insurance. Right now, Sterling held up his phone, making sure the recording was visible. I'm going to reach for my wallet in my back pocket. I'm going to move slowly. I'm recording this entire interaction for my safety. Just get your documents. Sterling pulled out his wallet, extracted his license. Sterling Hayes, Seattle address, clean record. He handed it over. Castellano took it back to his patrol car. Sterling waited, phone still recording, aware that this could escalate at any moment. He'd read too many stories, seen too many videos, black men in traffic stops that ended in violence over nothing. A small crowd had started to gather, museum visitors leaving the building, people walking past. A white woman in her 50s approached cautiously. "Excuse me, are you okay? I saw the officer stop you." Sterling nodded. "I'm fine, just being profiled for driving my own car." That's Sterling Hayes. Another voice. A young Asian man who'd been at the party. He's the photographer from the event. That's his G-Wagon. I helped him load equipment earlier. Castellano emerged from his patrol car, Sterling's license in hand. The vehicle registration came back clean. Owned by Sterling Hayes, no warrants, no violations. But instead of admitting the stop was baseless, Castellano doubled down. "Sir, I'm gonna need you to open the vehicle so I can verify the VIN number matches your registration." Sterling's jaw tightened. "You already ran my license and registration. Everything came back clean. You have no probable cause to search my vehicle." "I'm not searching, I'm verifying." "Verifying what? You've already confirmed I own the car. What you're doing now is harassment." The woman who'd approached earlier spoke up. "Officer, I watched this entire interaction. This man was loading his own equipment into his own vehicle. You stopped him without cause. This is profiling." "Ma'am, step back. This is official police business." Another voice, a black man in his 40s walking his dog. "I'm recording too." He pulled out his phone. "This is the third time I've seen you stop black drivers in expensive cars on this street. You'd never stop the white drivers." Castellano's radio crackled, his supervisor responding to his license check request. "Dispatch, what's the situation there?" Castellano keyed his radio. "Just verifying vehicle ownership on a suspicious stop." Sterling spoke loudly, making sure his phone caught every word. "There's nothing suspicious. I'm a photographer loading my equipment after a paid job." Officer Castellano saw a black man with an expensive car and assumed it was stolen. "He's profiling me based on race. Everything he's doing is illegal." A second patrol car arrived. Sergeant Maria Chen, 15 years on the force, known for de-escalation and common sense. She got out and immediately assessed the scene. Multiple civilians with phones out. One officer, one civilian. Expensive vehicle. She'd seen this pattern before. "Officer Castellano, what's going on?" Castellano gestured to Sterling. "Suspicious vehicle stop, verifying ownership." Chen looked at Sterling, then at the G-Wagon, then back at Castellano. "Did you run the plates?" "Yes." Came back, registered to him. "So the vehicle's not stolen?" "No, but I wanted to verify." Chen cut him off. "You ran the plates, the vehicle's registered to him. He provided his license. What exactly are you verifying?" Castellano had no answer. Chen turned to Sterling. "Sir, I apologize for this stop. You're free to go. You've done nothing wrong." Sterling didn't move. "With respect, Sergeant, I'm not just leaving. I want this officer's name and badge number. I want to file a formal complaint, because this isn't a mistake. This is racial profiling. He stopped me because he saw a black man with expensive property and assumed I stole it." Chen nodded slowly. "You have every right to file a complaint. Officer Castellano, return to your vehicle. I'll handle this." Castellano walked back to his patrol car, his pride wounded but his bias intact. Chen approached Sterling. "Mr. Hayes, I'm Sergeant Chen. I want you to know what happened here is unacceptable. You were stopped without reasonable suspicion. The fact that your vehicle is expensive is not probable cause. The fact that you're black is not probable cause. I'll personally ensure your complaint is documented and investigated." "I appreciate that, Sergeant. But documentation isn't enough." Sterling gestured to the crowd still watching. This is the third person here who said they've seen Officer Castellano stop black drivers. How many complaints does he have? How long has this been going on? Chen's expression was carefully neutral, but Sterling could see the recognition. I can't discuss his personnel file, but I can tell you your complaint will be taken seriously. The young man from the museum event approached. Sterling, I recorded the whole thing too, from when he first stopped you. I'll send you the file. Thank you. Sterling looked at Chen. I want copies of all body camera footage. I want the dash cam. I want every recording of this stop. You'll have access to all of it through the complaint process. Should officers who make pretextual stops based on vehicle value face immediate suspension? Let me know what you think. Sterling left 20 minutes later, after providing his statement to Sergeant Chen, after collecting contact information from 3 witnesses who'd recorded the stop, after making sure every detail was documented. He drove home, his hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. Not from fear, from rage, from exhaustion, from the knowledge that his success, his hard work, his legal ownership of his own property meant nothing to an officer who saw his skin color first. The video went viral within hours. Sterling posted it to his Instagram account, which had 60,000 followers. Professional photographers shared it. Seattle activists amplified it. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By morning, it was on local news. By afternoon, national outlets were covering it. Black photographer racially profiled during vehicle stop. Seattle police stop man for driving expensive car while black. Officer demands proof photographer owns his own Mercedes. Officer Ryan Castellano was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. The Seattle Police Department issued a statement. We take allegations of racial profiling seriously. The stop in question is under investigation. Officer Castellano has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. But the investigation revealed much more than one bad stop. Sterling's formal complaint triggered a review of Castellano's record. 18 complaints in 7 years. 17 of them involved people of color being stopped in upscale neighborhoods or expensive vehicles, all dismissed as routine traffic stops or verification procedures. The pattern was undeniable and damning. The Seattle Police Guild initially defended Castellano. He was following standard procedures, he had reasonable suspicion. But once the video evidence went public, once witnesses testified, once the complaint pattern was revealed, even the union quietly withdrew support. Sterling connected with 11 other people who'd been stopped by Castellano, 11 Black, Latino, and Asian professionals who'd been pulled over, questioned, accused of being in stolen vehicles or trespassing in neighborhoods where they lived or worked. All of them had documentation. All of them had been humiliated. None had filed formal complaints because they assumed nothing would happen. Now they came forward. The lawsuit was filed 6 weeks after the stop. 12 plaintiffs, Sterling Hayes, and 11 others. The claims were comprehensive: racial profiling and discrimination, violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent hiring and supervision by the Seattle Police Department. The evidence was overwhelming. 18 complaints over 7 years, video documentation of multiple stops, witness testimony, statistical analysis showing Castellano stopped drivers of color at a rate 9 times higher than white drivers. The city settled within 8 months. $7 million divided among the 12 plaintiffs. Sterling received $1.2 million. He used part of it to fund a photography mentorship program for young people of color interested in commercial photography. Officer Ryan Castellano was terminated 9 months after the stop. The termination letter was unsparing. Officer Castellano engaged in a pattern of racial profiling over 7 years. He repeatedly stopped drivers of color without reasonable suspicion, questioned their ownership of vehicles based solely on race, and created hostile encounters that violated civil rights. His actions brought discredit to the department and violated constitutional protections. His employment is terminated immediately. Castellano's name went into the National Decertification Index. He would never work in law enforcement again. He issued a brief statement through an attorney. I never intended to discriminate. I was trying to prevent vehicle theft. If my actions were perceived as racially motivated, I apologize. Sterling's response was public and unforgiving. You didn't perceive anything wrong. You saw a black man with something expensive and assumed he stole it. That's not perception. That's racism. And you did it 18 times to 18 different people over 7 years. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. The Seattle Police Department implemented reforms: mandatory documentation of all vehicle stops, including reason for the stop, quarterly audits to identify racial disparities in stops, immediate investigation of any officer with 3 or more profiling complaints, body camera footage review for all stops involving allegations of bias, a community oversight board with authority to review and recommend discipline. Sterling testified at a Washington state legislative hearing on traffic stop reform. "I worked for 15 years to build my business," he said. "I saved for 2 years to buy my G-Wagon. I earned it legally. I own it outright." But none of that mattered to Officer Castellano. He saw my skin color and expensive property, and his brain couldn't process that they could exist together legitimately. He paused. "I had witnesses. I had video. I stayed calm. I knew my rights. But what about the people who don't? What about the delivery driver in a nice car who gets stopped and doesn't have cameras? What about the entrepreneur who gets questioned and doesn't have witnesses? What happens when racism is disguised as theft, prevention, and no one's recording?" The committee listened. If we don't create consequences for officers who use vehicle value as pretext for racial profiling, we're telling them it's acceptable. Officer Castellano stopped 18 people over 7 years. How many more did he stop who didn't complain? How many people in this state are getting pulled over not because they committed traffic violations, but because officers decide they don't look like they should own what they're driving? Sterling continued his photography career, but he also became an advocate. He spoke at police academies about implicit bias and its real-world impact. He partnered with the ACLU on a traffic stop documentation app. He trained other people of color on how to safely record police encounters. He turned his 7 minutes of humiliation on a Seattle street into a movement for accountability. But the personal cost remained. The hyper-awareness every time he drove his G-Wagon. The anxiety at every traffic stop. The rage that surfaced when he saw other videos of black drivers being profiled. The exhaustion of knowing his success made him more of a target, not less. Therapy helped, community helped, purpose helped, but the trauma was permanent. Officer Castellano disappeared from public view. He moved out of Seattle to a small town in eastern Washington. He worked construction jobs under a different name. The judgment and termination followed him. His law enforcement career was over. His reputation was destroyed. He gave one interview to a local paper 18 months after the termination. He said he'd learned from his mistakes, that he was working on his biases, that he regretted his actions, but the internet never forgot. His name remained synonymous with racial profiling in traffic stops. The witnesses who recorded that Sunday afternoon said the experience changed them. They saw how quickly an innocent situation could escalate, how a black man doing nothing wrong could be treated as a criminal, how essential documentation was to proving what actually happened. Several of them began volunteering with organizations fighting police misconduct. Sterling's photography business grew. Clients appreciated not just his technical skill, but his advocacy. He shot campaigns for social justice organizations. He documented protests. He used his art to tell stories about the communities he came from and the issues they faced. His work appeared in museums and magazines, but his most meaningful project was mentoring young black photographers who faced the same barriers he'd overcome. 3 years after the stop, Sterling was invited to speak at the Seattle Art Museum, the same place where the incident began. He gave a presentation about his work, his journey, and what happened that Sunday afternoon steps from where he now stood. "I was loading my equipment into my vehicle," he said, his voice steady. "My vehicle that I owned, my equipment that I'd earned, and an officer saw that and couldn't believe it was legitimate. Not because of any evidence, not because of any crime, but because his bias told him black people don't drive Mercedes G-Wagons unless they stole them." The audience was silent. That bias almost put me in handcuffs. It definitely put me in danger. Armed officers responding to a vehicle stop have shot people for less. I survived because I recorded everything, because witnesses intervened, because I stayed calm even while being humiliated. But survival shouldn't depend on perfect behavior from the victim. It should depend on police not profiling people in the first place. Officer Castellano's career is over. That's consequence. I received a settlement. That's accountability. But money and terminations don't change the fact that 18 people were profiled over 7 years before anything happened. They don't address the countless other drivers of color who get stopped and never get justice. They don't fix the assumption that nice things in black hands must be stolen. The real question is, what changes now? Do police departments finally understand that vehicle value isn't reasonable suspicion? Do they finally train officers to examine their biases before making stops? Do they finally create systems that catch patterns before they reach 18 complaints? Because if we don't fix the systems that protected Ryan Castellano through 18 complaints, if we don't address the bias that teaches officers to see black success as suspicious, if we don't demand accountability before patterns become entrenched, then we're just waiting for the next viral video, the next lawsuit, the next person whose crime was owning something nice while black. Comment below if you think 3 profiling complaints should equal automatic termination. No investigation needed. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, if you think accountability matters and traffic stops can't be pretext for racial profiling, then hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding that police departments fire officers who profile before they reach double-digit complaints. We're going to keep fighting for a world where a photographer can load his equipment into his own vehicle without being treated like a car thief. This isn't just about Officer Castellano or Sterling Hayes. It's about all of us, and whether we're willing to confront the bias that makes black success look like crime.